The #1 most requested feature of Framer is here at last. Until now, we've relied on third parties like Framer Forms, which by the way, isn't going anywhere, if we wanted even simple things like an extra text input. But I'm not here to talk about Framer Forms. I am here to talk about Framer's Forms. It's different. So buckle up, because I'm going to cover everything. Everything from what the features are, to what they aren't but might be coming out soon, to how to use them and why maybe you'd want to choose one field over another. And I'm even going to sweeten the deal by throwing in a remix link with 5 different pre-built forms that are going to save you a bunch of time. So make sure you watch till the end to find out how you can get that. By the way, if you think I look or sound like shit, you'd be absolutely correct. I'm currently sick. But you know what's even more sick? These custom forms, bro. Fuck. So chances are you've already seen the announcement video that Framer put out showing all the different inputs that we can use in a form, but let's recap. So Framer's come out with 4 new input types. 4, is that all? Yes, 4. That's exactly not entirely true at all. No, in total there's 11, but out of the 11, 8 of them are actually different variants of text inputs, so actually, yes, 4. So starting with the text inputs, we have text. Great for shorter answers like names. We have a text area, perfect for longer responses. Then we have email, go figure. We have number, which is a cool one. Phone number, URL, date, and time. But not every form requires you to input text. So we also have a checkbox. And we have radio groups, and then lastly a drop-down selection, or select as it's called in Framer. Now that we know what our new toys are, let's have a play. To grab a new form, go to the insert panel, go to forms, and then grab a form builder. And I'm just going to drag one into the page. Now the basic anatomy of this form from the inside out is that you've got your inputs, which allow people to actually input data. Then wrapped around that, you've got your label. Technically, you can take the input out of the label layer and delete it, but please don't. Labels are really important for accessibility. It's actually what gets read out to visually impaired people through their screen reader. So next you have your submit button, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then wrapped around all these elements, you have your form layer. Without this form layer, none of the data we capture goes anywhere. Keep watching till the end to find out how you can send people's form submissions straight to your email. Let's delete these 2 and focus on this input here. If you click on it and then go into the properties, you'll see these input options. Use the type drop-down to change the input type. Use name to label the form internally. And what do I mean internally? Well, what you type here isn't displayed anywhere on the page, but it is displayed when you receive the form submission. For example, since this says name, if someone submitted a form to me, it would say name, colon, and then their name. And if I type something really clever, like idiot, I'd get an email saying idiot, colon, then their name, implying that whoever uses my form is an idiot, which is super amusing. And I'm sure it's not true, but they would never know. The placeholder text is the text that goes in the input but disappears as soon as you start typing in it. And finally, we have the required toggle switch. By setting it to yes, it won't allow anyone to submit a form unless they've filled out that specific field. And just a heads up, if you have a form with some required inputs and some optional ones, it's good practice to put an asterisk at the end of the required input labels. When you switch to a text area, you'll notice it automatically gives you a min height. This is because by default, it's resizable, which means that you're going to want to put a cap on how small a user can make it. If you don't want users to resize the text area, set it to no. Next is email. Setting this up is the same as setting up a text input. In fact, the only difference between them is that if someone submits a form without an @ sign and a .com or something like that, it'll give them an error. The number input is as you would expect. You can only input numbers, and if you somehow manage to input anything other than numbers, it'll throw you an error. Unless it's an E. For some reason, it lets you do E's, which is actually intended. I asked. Also, if you tap into a number input on mobile, it'll bring up a number pad instead of a normal keypad. Phone number is pretty much the same as the text input. I haven't noticed anything different. You can input numbers or letters and it won't give you an error. Just make sure to use this one if you're asking for someone's phone number and you'll be sweet. URL only accepts URLs. Shocking. But no other settings for this one to be aware of. Lastly, we have date and time, which again, give you no extra settings. Now, you should have a really good idea of what everything is, and you can stop watching. But you're not going to, are you? Because you know that there's more to it than that, and you're right. There are extra settings, hidden settings, extra secret hidden settings that you can access by clicking the plus in the Input Properties panel. Starting from the top, we have Autofill, which, as it states, enables password managers to autofill. Next we have Autofocus, which automatically focuses that field, but be careful with this one if the field is below the top of the page, like below the fold, because it will jump you to that field as soon as you enter the page. Next we have Hidden. Use this if you want a field to be shown in your form submission, like we talked about earlier, but you don't need the user to see it. An example might be if you have two of the same form being shown to logged in users and then logged out users, you might want this field to say logged in or logged out and then hide it with this setting. But how do I get it to automatically say logged in or logged out without the user typing anything? Because it's hidden, right? Well, that's where the value option comes in. Whatever you put in value will be written in the field. So to carry on with the logged in example, I'll write logged in, and you can see now that it says logged in the field. And if I preview it, you can see that it has the value of logged in, but unless it's hidden, I can actually still edit it. So make sure to keep that in mind. The remaining 3 extra settings only apply to the number field. Max sets a maximum number that you can go to. So if you're using this for an age field, you'll probably want to set it to something like 120. Or something. I don't know. What's the average life expectancy? 100-year-olds using your website? Maybe. Min sets a minimum number, which in most cases you're going to want to set to 0 unless you want people to choose negative numbers for their age. And then finally there's step. This controls how many numbers it jumps up or down when you press the arrow key. So if I set it to 2, watch what happens if I preview the page. Who would have guessed it? It's going up and down by 2. So that covers all the extra settings, but we're not quite done. We still don't know how to add any extra fields to the form. So to do that, we select the form layer, you can see here, and you'll notice a little plus appear at the bottom of the form. From that point, you can click it and choose to add either another text field, and we've just covered all of the text fields, but you can also choose a checkbox, a radio group, or a select, it says there, which is just a drop down like we covered earlier. And just to refresh, a checkbox either returns a yes or a no to a single field, single input. A radio group is going to return only yes to one out of these 3 options or more, and then no to all the other ones. And the way you can add a new one, like multiple options in this radio group, is by just duplicating it, and then you want to go into the radio button, and then you can change the value there. So I can just switch this to option 4, but you can change it to anything that you want, and then we can change the content to option 4 of the label. So now taking a look at this drop down, we've got these options here, and this is how you're gonna choose and add new options for them to select. You literally just click, 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 and then to get rid of them, you press the X. It's not rocket science. And then the cool thing is you can also add a line here to separate any new options. So if you've got a lot of options, just throw a line in there like that, and that's gonna separate it and make it more user-friendly, which is always a plus. Now we can take a look at the button. So if you click on it and check out the properties, you'll see this form state. So this is going to let you choose a variant based on different outcomes. So by default, it's got a loading and success variant, but you can also choose here an error or incomplete variant. So if you want to edit these variants or customize the button, you can just double click the button and it's going to open up the component where you can edit any of these variants. And let's just say you already had a button that you wanted to use. You don't have to use this button at all. So I could duplicate it and then right click it and then set as the submit button. And now I'm using this one, and this one's just a button that does nothing. Another option, if you're not too crazy about using buttons to tell people when the form has been successfully sent or when it hasn't been, is that you can select the form layer and then use an overlay. And then you have two options here. It will show on success or show on error. So that way you can use like a modal instead of the button. So it's just another option there for you. Moving on to the final segment, collecting the form data. Because what's the use of a form if you can't see the submissions? Now it's actually really easy to do this. You just click the form layer. We're already on it, so that's good. And then you go to the properties and you'll see two things: redirect and send to. Redirect is going to let you send the users somewhere after they submit their form. So let's say I wanted to send them back to the home page, I could do that. By clicking send to, you can see Framer's right out of the box giving us three options of how we can collect form submissions: email, webhook, and Google Sheets. And if you don't know what a webhook is, don't worry too much. I'll probably cover it in a later video if you want. We're going to take a look at the email because that's mostly what everyone's going to be using. When you click it, it's going to give you this new window. By default, it's going to fill in the recipient field with the email that you use to create the Framer account you're currently using. I actually just deleted mine because it's my personal email and I don't want you to see it. But basically, this window is just letting you control what the email looks like that you're going to receive with all of the form submission data on it. So I'm going to go ahead and test one using a job application template that's included in the remix you guys can grab. By the way, here's what you have to do if you want to grab the remix link. There's a link below the video. You don't have to do anything, really. I just wanted you to keep watching. If I'm honest, like, I don't want your email or anything. Just please subscribe. That'd be great. Check out my UI kit blocks. Anyway, back to the video. So I've filled everything in. Let me hit submit. There you go. Now let's check my email. There you go. The email's there with everything on it. Nice. I'm going to be making another video about Framer Forms next week, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it. And YouTube thinks you might like this video here. So go ahead, see if they're right. Meanwhile, I am lightheaded and need to sleep because I'm really sick. So I'm going to go back to bed.